All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to see so many people signed up to join us today. Just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and once the video is finished processing, we will have it posted on City Bureau's YouTube page so you can watch it back to review anything that you need to know. Or if you have any friends who couldn't make it today, you can share the link with them. My name is Dawn Rhodes. I'm the fellowship director here at City Bureau, and that means that I oversee pretty much every aspect of our program, from the program design to the curriculum, leading some of our learning sessions, and as you see here, with the recruiting, interviewing, and hiring of our new fellows. Joining me is Ariel, who is our Civic Information Director, and Navi, who's our Documenters Engagement Manager, and both of them are going to help us with managing our Q&A and just making sure everything runs smoothly today. Just a quick run of show of what you can expect from today. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about City Bureau, talking about the work that we do, giving you a little bit of a TLDR about the fellowship, and then I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about our application. There's a few key questions on our application that we really want you to spend the most time on, and that give us the best insight into who you are and what you might gain from being a fellow. So I'm going to give you some pro tips about how to approach those and what personal and professional experiences that you can pull in to help respond to those questions. Um, and then I will open it up for about 20 minutes or so of a Q&A. If you look at your navigation bar towards somewhere in the middle, you should see a Q&A box. So please use that to submit your questions so it's a little bit easier for us to keep track of what questions are coming up, what themes are coming up that we can kind of address all at once. And we can also mark off any questions that we've answered so we can keep track. And then I have the room open until I have our time booked until about 12:45. So if you need to hop off, yes, I did. It is being recorded. Yes. So if you need to hop off at 12:45, no worries, but I can keep the room open a little bit longer if we still have a few more questions that we need to address. And and when you log off, whenever you need to hop out of the webinar, you should see a survey pop up, and it should take you no more than about 90 seconds to fill out. Feedback is really helpful, so I would love any suggestions you have about whether this was helpful for you to make a decision about the fellowship, to fill out the application. So anything you have to say, we'll take it. Okay. With that, we started. All right. So before I jump in, so please save this email, fellowship@citybureau.org. This is the best way to get in touch with our fellowship team if you have any questions at all about the application process, or if we run out of time, if we didn't get to a question that you have, if you think of another question after we're done, or if there's just something you'd like to ask us privately, this is the best way to get in touch with us. So fellowship@citybureau.org. So that pings our entire team and we can get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, so I know some folks in the room are documenters, which is great. Some of you guys might be very familiar with City Bureau and our work, and some of you might be new to us, which is fine. So I just wanted to start with a bit of background. So City Bureau is in its 11th year. We started in 2015, and our co-founders at the time really started with the mission of addressing these four structural issues with journalism, with the journalism landscape, with the media landscape, both in Chicago and more broadly than that. So a lot of it really coalesces around this idea of people being disenfranchised, our communities of color in particular in Chicago being disenfranchised, not getting the information they need, not being served by local media. So this was where we started, and quite a lot has changed over the past decade. So not to say that all of those issues have been solved, that'd be great. That's not the case, but quite a lot has changed and changed for the better. So most notably, there's a lot more local media that's popped up, which is fantastic. So places like Block Club Chicago, The Tribe, Borderless, and Justice Watch, Investigative Project for Race and Equity, and quite a few others all have started and are doing really fantastic work to serve broader communities, broader segments of audiences in Chicago. So because that has changed, City Bureau also has changed for a variety of reasons, but City Bureau's approach to the work has expanded quite a bit over the past 10 years. So we are based in Chicago. We started in Chicago. We're based in Bronzeville on the South Side, but we are now a national nonprofit organization. And the ethos that ties all of our work together is reimagining local media in terms of how it gets made, who makes it, and how can we make sure that it's best serving the people that we're trying to reach. So we are not a typical newsroom. In fact, we're not just a newsroom at all. We're more than that. We have civic engagement, local journalism, and civic training organization all in one house. So here's kind of what that looks like day to day. So a lot of our work is kind of lives in these buckets here. So documenters, most of you know what that is. That is a national network where we pay people to cover local meetings and produce notes that keep, a record of who's making the key policy decisions in our communities that affect our lives. So that's probably the most obvious way that we are showing that this process of making local media more democratic and who gets to be part of that process of producing information that helps people. We also have our digital equity impact program, which is a really cool partnership with Cook County, giving grants to local organizations that are in their own ways helping to improve access to technology, internet, and digital literacy for their communities. And then we have our civic information and engagement team. That's where Ariel and I live, and that's where the fellowship lives. And as part of that, there's a lot of things going on in that team, but as part of that, it's community-centered, solutions-based engagement, journalism, and reporting to connect more people with vital information that helps them improve their lives. So this also is the division where we have our public newsrooms and other events and outreach events that some of you may be familiar with or have attended in the past. Okay, so getting a little bit into some of the key details about the fellowship. So I'm just going to summarize some for you today. So this webpage where we have the link to the application, I really encourage you, if you decide to apply, to read this through because there's a lot more there to help you understand like what we're looking for, what the qualifications are, and all that. I'm just going to go over a few that are particularly important for you. So this is a paid 6-month program in 2 phases where the goal is for you to design and then put into action a project that connects neighbors to critical information about an issue that they really care about. That's kind of the long and short of it. You can expect weekly learning sessions that kind of that build off of these buckets of skills, which would be community engagement, civic participation and civic issues, and journalism. So we are still journalists, and so we're still going to teach some of those skills even as we're reimagining how the program works. And then in both phases, you can expect roughly half of your time to be with us, with our civic information team, our staff, your fellows, and that group where you're co-working, you're learning together, you're designing some of your work together, and then half of those hours are for you to use as you need to, depending on what your other commitments are, what your schedule looks like. For this upcoming cycle, which starts in September and runs through April, we're hiring 6 fellows. So you can expect to work in groups of 6, in groups of 3, in pairs, and individually to carry out some of the work that we're doing. I will get to questions in a little bit, but one thing I do want to address now, if you are accepted into the fellowship, you are committing to the 6 months. So there's no cherry picking of doing one piece of the program or the other. It's the full 6 months that you're committing to. So if you move on to the interviewing phase, we will ask you about what your time commitments look like over the next 6 months to make sure that you can commit to those weekly sessions. Okay. So I won't read through all of this, but just a little bit of so you can kind of see the differences of how phase one and phase two shift. So obviously phase two is shorter because the idea is that at the end of the year, you will have your projects designed and ready to go. So most of what we'll be spending your time in 2027 from January to March is putting those projects into action. So when you start, you're committing to 12 hours a week for 14 weeks. Once we get into January, that scales down to 8 hours a week for 10 weeks. And then even though the timing is a little bit different, the breakdown of the work is pretty much the same. You're spending about half of your time with us, with your fellowship crew, half of your time to delegate your time as whatever works for your schedule. And we'll help you figure that out. 1 second. So this is not an exhaustive list at all, but here's kind of a sample of what you might expect to learn. And when I say that we're teaching skills around community engagement and journalism and civic information and audience engagement, here's kind of what that could mean. And we can scale this education up or down depending on what you already know. So if you're looking at this going like, yeah, I know all about city council. I go to every city council meeting and I got this. Well, then we'll scale up and we'll talk a little bit more about the power structures of city council. We'll talk a little bit more in nuance about that. Or if you're looking at this and going, I don't have the slightest idea how the city budget works. Well, fortunately, you have two people on this call who spent the past 6 months leading a fellowship session about the city budget. So we can teach you that. So that's the idea there being we need to understand how our governmental systems, our political systems work and how they factor into our communities, how that affects our communities, how that affects information in our communities as well. Community engagement is somewhat self-explanatory, but mostly spending a lot of time in your community building relationships and understanding what they need. Journalistic skills, writing is a really core skill that can apply to lots of different things. So reporting, just gathering information, doing research, interviewing techniques, really the art of having a really generative conversation with somebody and learning how to listen actively, ask follow-up questions and things like that. Um, we'll talk a little bit about storytelling for different formats because not it doesn't always make sense to write something. Maybe it's better as a social media video. Maybe maybe it's better as a photo or photos, photo gallery or something like that. There's lots of different ways to tell stories to get information out. And if we need to, we can talk a little bit more about data, where data lives, how we can analyze data to understand how issues play out in our community. So we'll get into that too if we need to. Audience engagement, we'll talk probably more about that once we get to phase two, when you're putting your projects into action, because that's the process of understanding, like coming up with a right strategy of like, you have this information, you know that people in your community need it. So what's your process? What's your strategy for getting it out there and distributing it, making sure that people see it and they understand what's going on, they can use it, and it integrates into their lives really seamlessly. So even though a big part of phase one is designing this information project, you will have some assignments along the way to capitalize on the skills that you're learning. So the first two get into some of those journalistic and storytelling skills and writing a blog about the work that you're doing. This is kind of an exercise of, building trust. This is part of that process. It's people really want to understand the why of what we're doing, the behind the scenes of what we're doing, in as much as they want to see the actual product. That's a really big value of City Bureau. So being transparent about who we are, where we're coming from, what work we're doing, and why is a really good exercise. So you can expect to do some of that. You can also expect to write kind of an explainer, Citypedia style article that breaks down a issue in local government to explain that to people. In the 11 years of City Bureau, one of the, if not the most clicked on story that we have on our site is what does an alderman do? So that kind of information is all still very useful to people. So it could be something like that. It could be breaking down like how to give public comment at a particular board. It could be how to register to vote. There's lots of different things that we could come up with there about, you know, a particular aspect of civic information that people need to understand in order to engage with their government. And then we'll do some community outreach, community engagement work, even as you're designing an information project, a longer term project that you're putting into action in 2027. We want to be sensitive to the fact that there might be some things going on in our communities where that are more immediate and where people need information right now. So we'll think through what is that? What could be the resource that we can provide, and how can we get that to them quickly? So that will depend on the work that you're doing. That'll depend on the communities you're working with and what they care about. There's a lot of stuff happening this fall that could involve that, you know, local elections, the school board, there's a lot, the budget, there's a lot of things going on, or it could be none of those things, right? Again, there's a fuller list of this on the website, but just highlighting a few things for you. We really want you to understand that all these learning and co-working sessions, the time that you're spending with us, the time that we expect you to be working on your own, this is mandatory time. So you have to devote the 12 hours a week during phase one, the 8 hours a week during phase two. These are mandatory. We understand people, you might have vacations planned and things like that. There will be time off during major holidays, federal holidays, and things like that. But we say that to help you to just be honest about whether or not this is something you can commit to throughout the entire 6 months. Okay. So these are mandatory. There's a limit to how many sessions you can miss. It is your responsibility to make up any time you miss. And the reason we put these limits on is not to be punitive, but because this is a group project, you are working in conjunction with several other people. It affects you if you're missing learning sessions, if you're consistently absent, but it affects the rest of the team as well. Okay. You'll notice if you have not yet applied, you'll notice we're not asking for a cover letter or a resume. We don't do that at City Bureau, so that is not necessary. You do need to live in Chicago. There is no all remote option for this. It's just not conducive to the work that we're doing where you have to be present and in your communities for several hours a week. So you do need to live in Chicago or very, very close by. So like neighboring suburb, very close by, and it's easy for you to get to Chicago. If you're an active or an experienced documenter, great. We would love to see you apply. If you're a South and West Sider, we would love to see you apply. These are the areas that we serve most. This is where we focus our work most at City Bureau, is on the South and West Side. So we would love to see you apply if that applies to you. So a couple of examples of past fellowship projects that I just wanted to share with you that I think can be like inspo as you're thinking about whether or not this is a fit for you and what kind of work you might want to do. So these projects still involved some slightly more traditional reporting where we were producing stories alongside of all this, but there were these really good um, resources, information resources that were produced as part of this. So one is the cord, and this was our cycle that focused on Black maternal health. And this was in part a story series that we co-published with Austin Weekly News, but the other output of it was this really detailed maternal health resource, like a database of all the caretakers, not all, but every caretaker we know of that focuses on Black maternal health, whether that's during pregnancy or supporting people who wanted to get pregnant, postpartum, mental health care. So it's a huge list. I actually just revised it and updated it not too long ago. It's a huge list. And then our fellows set up a free text messaging service so you could get that sent directly to you and figure out what kind of options there were near you. So I really love that as an example. And we also, a couple of years ago, did a Know Your Rights guide, which is our fellowship cycle that focused on the how migrant day laborers, predominantly from Venezuela, were settling in to Chicago and finding work. And this was created in partnership with the Latino Union of Chicago, which does a lot of outreach and support or for migrant laborers. And this came about after finding out from them that as they're doing this outreach and trying to let them know about what rights and protections that they have as people who live in Chicago and Illinois, regardless of their citizenship, it would be they said it would be helpful to have a physical thing to hand them and so that they can have that information handy, but they didn't really have the bandwidth to create that. So that's where the fellows came in to create this bifold in both languages, in English and in Spanish. So so people who apply for this always ask me what makes for a great fellow, and I love that question so much. So we intentionally don't ask for specific professional experience because we know that people from all walks of life, no matter what your background is, like you have something valuable that you can bring, no matter what you already know or don't know. So really, a lot of the keys to success that we've seen in fellows have to do with how they approach the work rather than particular skills that they are bringing to the table. So here's just some of them. And as long as you are eager to learn, as long as you are committed to doing the work, you're accountable to yourself and to your team, we can work with that. So if some of those skills that we are talking about on previous slides are not your forte, but you're committed to learning them, great. That's fine. That's completely fine. So we do really value giving and getting feedback, which is why I'm asking you for feedback as well. So it's not just one way where we're telling you how to improve. We want to hear how we can improve. And that goes amongst the fellows, that goes between fellows and staff. We really value that a lot at City Bureau. We really value people who are not afraid to ask for help, but they can think on their feet, they can try to problem solve on their own, but they still understand you have a network of people here who are devoted to helping you, and we are here to help. Um, like I said, you're going to work as a team, so we want to see people who are excited about that opportunity and are able to work as a team and be a really great collaborator. We do that a lot at City Bureau. Okay, so in about 5 or 6 minutes, we are going to get to the Q&A part. So now would be a good time to start getting your questions in this Q&A in the Q&A box. So if you want to wait until after this part, that's fine too, but just a heads up that we're getting there. So I promised I would talk about the application. So there's really, most of the application is relatively self-explanatory, but there's really four things on here that will tell us the most about you and tell us the most about how you're thinking about your community. So wanted to flag those to help you to understand what we're looking for there. So when we're asking about your experience in civic and community engagement, I want to be clear, this does not have to be professional experience. This does not have to be anything that you are doing as part of a job or anything like that. Personal experience counts for a lot here. So here are just some examples of what that could look like, but it does not have to be something that you necessarily have on a resume. If this is something that you just do in your free time or you do on a small scale with like neighbors or a group of friends, we want to hear about that too. Anything that you do to get more involved in your community or to help people in your community understand key things that are happening or to get information, great. All of that counts. Um, so just think about the communities that you're a part of. So that those could be neighborhoods, those could be identity-based communities. There's lots of different spaces that we move in and out of as people. So just any community that you're a part of, we want to hear about that. And then civic issues in your community. So, when we're talking about civics, we're talking about local government, political systems, how people, what rights and responsibilities people have, how people can get involved in their community. So tell us what is happening in your community. What are the big issues that people are talking about? What are they fired up about? What are they concerned about? What are some of those things? Just tell us what's happening in your community. that is not an exhaustive list, but just examples of some things that could come up for you. So just, yeah, tell us what that is looking like. Then this question about community information builds on that a little bit. So builds on the civic issues part a little bit. So we want to hear more about how the information ecosystem in your community works. And all these questions are on the application to help guide you about that. But thinking through, where do you and your neighbors get, or people in your community get information about this issue? Is it word of mouth? Is it through local media, local news? Is it through the radio? Is it through podcasts or TikTok, social media? There's so many, or some combination of those things. There's so many different ways people share information. Tell us a little bit about that. What are some reasons people aren't getting that information? We talked about our digital equity grant. Is it because some people don't have internet access or don't have as, great internet access? So, um, it, there's a lot of different reasons. Is there a language barrier? So there's a lot of different reasons why people might not be getting critical information. Tell us some of the things that are going on there for you. What would people do if they did have access to that information? Think about that a little bit. And this last question kind of blends into the next one, but what have people already tried in order to share this information? In terms of setting up different networks, whether that's like starting a newsletter or maybe a WhatsApp group or something like that. And just what have people already tried there? And then building off of that, we would love to hear an example of somebody or a group or an organization that's doing a really great job sharing information about a key issue in your community. And we want you to reflect a little bit on about why you think that works. So what have they gotten right in terms of their strategy to share information about that issue? And how do you see that working? And think big, think small. Any example works here. So it could be something that works as broadly as the city. It can be just your neighborhood. It can be just your block. It can be just your neighbors who live in your building. Okay, communities come in all different shapes and sizes. So any of those, any of those make sense. Any of those would be valuable for us. Okay. And after this slide, we'll get into the Q&A. So just a reminder to use the Q&A box if you can to submit your questions. It'll just help us to keep track of that. And so just some final tips here as you're doing your application. You'll notice that our questions, especially the ones that we flagged earlier, have word counts next to them. So please be mindful of that. Now, you can there's free word counter apps and websites online that are very helpful. You can just paste your text in there and it will help you to figure out how long something is. Now, if I say, I would like the answer to be 200 words or fewer, if you give me 210, I don't care about that. That's not really the point. But if I ask for 200 words and you give me 300, try to scale back, try to be a little bit more concise than that. Conversely, if I ask for 200 and you give me 15, we want you to say more. Okay, so try to just get in range of the word count, but don't worry too much about it being exactly 200 words, but that's just the range that we're looking for. We are journalists through and through, Ariel and I, and so we love a story. So any of those things that we talked about, especially in the 4 questions that we highlighted, if you have a story from your life or an anecdote that really reflects the issue that we're talking about or reflects the dynamic that we're talking about, we would love to hear it. That's a great way to answer that question rather than just directly answering it. Tell us a story. We love that, and that will definitely get our attention. Um, just trust me when I say this. Thank me, just thank me now, thank me later. Write your answers in a separate document and have those saved. It happens on occasion. It's usually not an issue, but sometimes you just want to protect in case like the application itself glitches for any reason. If you submit and it doesn't go through or anything like that, have your answer saved in a separate document. So if something goes wrong on the text side, you can just copy and paste those answers pretty quickly. Take your time. Please give yourself time. There's a couple of weeks between now and the application deadline. So having your answers drafted in a separate document can help with that. To maybe answer a few questions on one day, take a break, come back to it, and finish it. So give yourself time to really think this through and put together the best application you can. Um, do not use AI to fill out the responses. Here's why. We're really very cautious about how or if we use AI in our work for a variety of reasons. But this is a program where we value your creativity, your originality, your perspectives, your lived experiences. And that's not something that you can reflect properly with AI. So we want to hear from you. We're not interested in hearing what ChatGPT can spit out. Okay. So if we can see that you are using AI to fill out this application, that could affect that could affect your candidacy, whether or not we move forward with consideration. Okay, so please don't use AI. And then there's your application deadline, 11:59 p.m. Central Time, August 11th. No late submissions will be accepted. We have too many people to consider here, so all the more reason why give yourself time so that you are able to submit on time.
We do
All
take
right.
applications on a rolling basis, so if
Yes.
it does get submitted late, it will carry over into our next
Yeah.
application pool,
Yeah.
for the record.
Yeah.
Um, Couple of things that got asked in the chat that I'm going to move into. Yes,
Sure.
this session is being recorded, and we will share the link once it gets posted. Um, the Wednesday in-person sessions are required to be in person. There are two different time slots. You can go noon to 4 p.m. or you can go 2 to 6 p.m. Um, yes, these are daytime, Monday through Friday sessions. We are testing this out. Our past versions of the fellowship have all been evening sessions. And in those situations, there are people who are not able to participate for, they have childcare in the evenings or, a variety of reasons. So we're testing out this daytime version for this cycle. Will that always be when the sessions take place? Not necessarily. We're going to see how this one goes. We're going to, gather feedback. Please, keep us in the loop. One person asked, will future sessions be in the evenings? Very possibly. So you are able to submit your application. Any applications that are submitted and people who are not selected as fellows, we do carry those applications over into the new cycle. We do reach out and say, like, if you'd like to submit an updated application, you can do so, yeah, at that time when we're starting to do the selection process again. So, feel free to submit your application and that's a good way to stay in the loop about the future cycles or, follow our socials, check in. You can reach out to Dawn and I personally. Um, Flexibility with the work hours, those are completed on your own time, the independent work time. So that can kind of, ebb and flow based on your schedule. And here was a good one, Don, to kick us off with the Q&A. As for the information gaps and things community members are curious about, are there any topics or areas of concern that repeatedly pop up that surprise you? Stuff that resonates that people might not expect, which I thought was a
Mm.
fun, intriguing question.
Things that come up that surprise me. Um,
I would say,
yeah,
like,
yeah. Go ahead, please.
not that I was surprised that snap cuts have snap cuts to snap benefits with and increased work requirements have affected people, but I think how like deeply they've
Mm,
affected people was interesting to me as like a clear need,
hmm.
and like people looking for alternative options.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think, yeah, plus one. I don't think the actual topics of like what people are thinking about or things people are concerned about necessarily surprises me, but just hearing all the different layers of how that's affecting their lives is not necessarily something that occurs to me. So especially when we're talking about like a big issue, and this is something that we're focusing on in our civic information team, is affordability or the lack of affordability. And the different ways that keeps permeating different areas of life, and also connects to issues that aren't on its face about affordability, is really, really fascinating to me, and only uh, reinforces how much of a concern that is. And how, so when you're talking about SNAP or rising cost of living, rising cost of groceries, a thing that we hear again and again that doesn't always occur to me is how, what that essentially means is that families are having to shift what money they have, more money over to cover, and then making decisions about what bills they're going to pay or what bills have priority. So like, that might mean they fall behind on their utility bills because they have to have groceries, or vice
Mhm.
versa, or something like that. Or um, they're spending less, not just on disposable income, but just like, gas prices have gone up. So that means that the
Yeah.
budget can only stretch so much. So they have to make decisions about what is really the most important to them. And that's a really
Yeah.
disappointing, that's a difficult thing to hear. So yeah. So
Yeah. We
I'm
we
also
do
also
we do
find
have a
it,
lot of questions,
yeah,
Dawn.
go for it. Okay.
We've
Hit
got
me.
a healthy number of questions. So um one that I did answer, what is a documenter? One of City Bureau's programs is called Documenters, and we pay and train people to cover public meetings and create written records of those meetings, along with some other special assignments. I am at the office. Yes, me and Stanley are getting lunch after this. Um, you can learn more by going to documenters.org, but that is a program where people get a lot of understanding of civic processes and structures that then serve them really well in the fellowship. A couple are going to answer live. Will this fellowship be available next year slash in the spring, Dawn?
Yes, we don't have the dates set for that yet, but yes, we usually offer at least one or two. We've usually done three cycles. We're shifting that because now it's a 6-month program. But yes, we don't have the dates set for that yet, but you can expect that there will be other sessions that we'll offer in 2027.
Yes. And again, about the Wednesday co-working sessions, this cycle, they're going to be in person on Wednesdays. Part of the reason for that is that they'll overlap with our staff reporting team meetings, and we want to make sure that everyone is kind of working together at those times. Will that always be the case in future cycles? Not necessarily, but that is something that we are committing to for this cycle. Um, how the stipend is taxed. It is like a typical paycheck. Am I, is that right, Don?
Yeah.
Do taxes get taken out automatically?
I need to confirm that. I think actually. I think actually that might be a situation where, because
It's
you would be a
contracting?
contractor, yeah, you're a contractor, so
Yes.
you would be responsible for paying your own, for
Yes.
setting aside whatever taxes you owe for that. I'm pretty sure that that's how that works. Yeah.
But that if that's something you needed help with figuring out in the fellowship, like we'd be happy to walk you through it. I've been paid as a
Mhm.
contractor before. I know that our finance director would be happy to help out and kind of give people a walkthrough as well. Um, okay. Full-time student exceptions. How do we decide who can manage this program and have a full-time school schedule? I'm going to say that it is very hard to manage this as a full-time student. The difference between that and a full-time job is that generally as a student, you've also got exams to study for, you've got papers to write, you've got a lot of things outside of your core class hours that take up a lot of time. You might have, extracurriculars, you have a lot of additional things that take up your time, and that's where we start to see people struggle with handling a full-time school schedule and the fellowship. um, when would we decide? How do we decide who can manage this program? What are the exceptions? It's very individual, case by case. We usually have a pretty in-depth conversation about like what does your coursework look like? Like, are you what phase are you at in your degree program? Are you like, wrapping up and you've got a couple of like independent studies? Do you like it's a very like individual kind of
Mhm.
thing that we'd figure out. I would encourage you to apply. And those are always conversations we can talk through and figure out from there.
Yeah.
Uh, Dawn, I will bat this one over to you. When you are reviewing applications, what are the things that really make you say, wow, I need this person to do the fellowship? And can you share any
Mm.
examples of spectacular applications?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of our most recent fellows actually was just talking to them over email, Amari. Like that application definitely stood out to me as just like I have to talk to this person, I have to interview this person, and part and because Amari is a West Sider, a poet, an artist. Has done some really cool organizing, created like their own like queer um, writers workshop, which was really cool. They do archiving, and this is an example of someone who told us a really cool story that got our attention about why they wanted to be in the fellowship. And their story had to do with doing archiving about their family and doing storytelling and actually coming across a kind of like a myth in their family that they had to confront, and having these difficult conversations with relatives in order to kind of correct the record about what they understood about their own family history. And they told me in our interview that that connects to their desire to being a storyteller and a journalist, because like it helped them to understand that you never know what somebody's story is, and you never know what you're going to find out. But there's so much value in letting people be heard. And so that stands out immediately as somebody who got my attention. Mariam Asif, who was also part of that cycle, got our attention really great because Mariam's originally from Pakistan and talked to us about how they really wanted to go back to Pakistan to create that. They grew up in an area that didn't have a lot of media trust, and how they came to the US and became a journalist, and what they've learned from those experiences, and that she wants to go back to Pakistan to create some kind of an ecosystem, a media ecosystem where there is trust. So that got my attention too. Yeah, but telling us stories about your lives and helping us to see like where the fellowship fits into that will always resonate with us.
I am trying to answer some of the shorter questions. I'm typing those out, so keep an eye on those if you ask them. Um, Dawn, will there be any multimedia opportunities in the fellowship?
Yeah, for sure. It really depends on what the projects are, and because I think I saw this question come up. We don't want to over design the projects at this stage because we want you to go out and figure out like what makes sense for your community. So we're going to design as we go. So yeah, we have great connections and networks of visual journalists, of multimedia journalists, multimedia experts who can help us with that. So yeah, we'll plug that in. We'll plug that in whenever it makes sense, for sure.
Dawn, are people eligible to apply if they are currently outside the Chicago area but have lived in Chicago in the past and are willing to relocate for the fellowship?
Yes, if but keeping in mind that we are starting in September, so that's a pretty quick turnaround to relocate. But if you are from Chicago, you know the area, you're willing to relocate and you can do that before September, sure, we can consider that. Yeah.
Also, keep in mind this is a part-time position,
Right.
so
Right.
the financials of that are obviously your business, but do keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Will this program help connect us with organizations that may have use for the skills we will be learning and refining?
Mm, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, because part of the work that we're talking about here is also partnering with community organizations and developing those networks as well. So whether or not they have, whether or not that spells an opportunity for you directly after the fellowship, not sure, but like for sure, we're going to be partnering with people who want the skills and benefit from what we're doing. So yeah, we have gosh, like our fellows, we've trained over 170 fellows over the past 11 years. Some of them have gone on to nonprofit work. Some of them have started their own nonprofits and their own organizations. They've freelanced. They have come onto our staff at City Bureau. They have worked in newsrooms all over the country. They lead newsrooms all over the country. So yeah, we're very confident that this will set you up for a variety of different careers and different opportunities that can really benefit from this. Yeah.
I want to note that we are at 12:45. We do have some remaining questions. Sorry to everyone if we are running a little bit over. We're going to stick around till 1 p.m. But if your question didn't get answered and you have to hop off, feel free to email us again at fellowship@citybureau.org. And we will definitely respond to you and get back to you. We'll also keep staying on here and keep recording answers to anything that hasn't been answered yet. But just in case you have to hop off, I just wanted to note the time for everybody.
Yep.
So thanks everyone. But we'll keep going. Dawn, these are kind of a couple twin questions. How does team group project work look like? What does team group project work look like in tandem with a specific project fellows are doing? Is there a shared theme to work under? And how
Mhm.
have past fellows structured their work days? And well, let's start there.
Yeah. So probably the best example, the most recent example we can give is from the fellowship session that we just completed, which was a group project around the city budget. So we decided on the outset that this was going to be a project all coalescing around different aspects of understanding the city budget. From there, with the training that we gave them, we really gave our fellows quite a bit of latitude to decide where do you want to go with this? Like, what stories do you want to pursue? What resources do you want to produce? And then, with help from me, Ariel, and some of our other team, we helped to create like a project plan with the understanding that like there were some aspects of a project that we have to be aware that we only have so much time, so but we really gave them a lot of latitude to decide like this is what is really coming up to the surface, this is what people are talking about, so this is what we want to do. And then they worked on that as an entire group of four. They worked on individual components of that project on their own. They worked on other projects in pairs. But every week they were coming together at their team meetings to share resources, to let people know about like where they were going and their reporting, any issues that they were coming up with, troubleshooting, strategizing, and sharing resources, sharing sources, sharing contact information, and even like partnering together on key interviews for parts of the project that can benefit from this same person's expertise. So that's that's part of how it will work for this. So it could be that we have, a group of fellows that are kind of concentrating around a certain community or a certain group of communities, and that's how you guys are going to work together. And in terms of how they structured their work, again, we largely left it up to them to decide on their own schedules what open time do they have to get this work done. They knew what the next step was and how much time they needed to set aside. So we let them figure out like, okay, we're both available Friday at 1. This works for us, so we can get together and work that way. So we can help with that, but we understand that everybody has lives. This is a part-time role, not even, but a part-time role. So we can help with coordinating that, but we largely left it up to the fellows to kind of figure out on their own how they wanted to work on their own time.
Uh, Are you able to pitch a project that another organization may have initiated previously but didn't have capacity to complete? My answer to that would be it's going to depend somewhat on the ownership of that work done
Hmm.
so far. And that's where you get into like a contractor work versus freelance. If we had permission from that organization, or if it was something that was owned by the contractor, and just kind of not completed, or it would depend a lot on some of those factors, but it's definitely something that we can talk through and figure out. um can it support people beyond Chicagoans, sure. I mean, if this is a project that, helps more people than
Mhm. Yeah, we're not going to say no to
than a
that.
one community, then I don't see any issue with that. We're coming up on the tail end. A couple that I answered as a chat. Can we do reporting on the suburbs? Right now, we're focused on Chicago's south and west sides, so exceptions to that would be pretty rare. One example that does come to mind is there is a network of churches
Hmm.
who all try and help immigrant communities.
Hmm.
But and those churches are located around Chicago and in the
Hmm.
south and west sides, but that organization is technically based in the suburbs. So, like
Hmm.
in that case, like yes, we would still include that organization. It just sort of it's kind of a case by case sort of thing, but the main focus of our work is on Chicago's south and west sides because those are under-resourced, undercovered communities. Trying to see if there's
Hmm.
any other ones that I missed. Uh, I think if anyone has a question that we haven't touched on, please check in with us right now because otherwise, one more question. Is there a particular advantage that reporters have when accessing FOIA data? Oh, great question.
Great
Asking
question.
because
Super
if a
question.
layperson does not, then this could
Yeah,
be a core challenge as to why the info does not get to the public. No,
that's a
reporters
fantastic
do
question.
not have special rights when it comes to FOIAs. However, they do have more experience in navigating it. They may have more resources like access to lawyers that can fight a FOIA denial. And they generally just have more time and bandwidth to go around and figure out who you're supposed to ask and, what the parameters are of a request,
Hmm. Hmm.
that sort of thing. So I'd say that that's it is a challenge because it's a very labyrinthian system. It is not easy to navigate. You get a lot of denials, you get a lot of, extensions, figuring out like if someone is rightfully withholding that information or not. Like, you really do start digging into like the law. And like there have been cases where like I've needed a lawyer, like an actual lawyer
Hmm.
to like walk me through a request or a denial.
Yeah. That's a fantastic question. Yeah, generally, I think journalists just have more experience understanding how FOIA works and have more bandwidth to keep going at recalcitrant organizations that don't want to give us information. And so, yeah, but so FOIA is available technically to anybody. But tracking it down, but is try FOIAing the Chicago Police Department. Godspeed. So it takes time and it takes a lot of tenacity, and not everybody has bandwidth for that. We have lives. So, yeah, that would be the advantage of journalists for sure. But it is a tool that's available to everyone. Great question.
Will this fellowship dig into the FOIA process? Quite possibly, quite
Hmm.
likely. Some of that will be determined by the projects you do and what information you need to complete those projects. But we're definitely open to it, and we do have reporters on staff and Don and I to some extent who can also help with that. Um, Reporting on Harvey, news and politics, getting more official training on reporting techniques while contributing to projects here in Harvey. Your city bureau project probably would not be focused on Harvey, but there's nothing preventing you from taking the skills you learned from this fellowship and applying them to your
Hmm.
outside work on Harvey
Hmm.
news and politics. Ryan, I think that hopefully answers your question. We always say, like in the fellowship, like just because you're doing like this is not going to be your only story. This is not going to be your only project. This is not going to be your last article. This is just the one you're doing here. Um, can we please review whether there is an individual project and then also a group project done? Uh, and how will people decide on the topics that they'll be doing either for an individual and or group project?
Yeah. So what you're doing in terms of developing an information needs project, that is something that's going to happen collectively as a group. But what it could involve is components of it are things that you guys tackle in smaller groups or individually in order to make that work. So We will decide on the topic together, but it really depends. The part of the reason we're not going in with a particular topic right now is because we want you to go into your communities and tell us what people need, not the other way around. That's a big kind of issue with journalism is that, somebody like me, an editor like me, thinks that there's a great story idea and tells you to go find out more information about that. We're trying to do it the other way around. Go talk to your community, go talk to your neighbors, tell us what information they need, and then we can structure the project around that so that we can ensure this is something that they actually want and need and can use.
The baseline of what we're looking for is something that will close an information gap and provide resources to community centered around affordability. So that can be a very wide span of things. And full disclosure, this is our first time doing the fellowship this way. So we don't know what projects are going to come out of this.
Mhm.
We have some ideas, we have examples of things that we've done in the past that would be a fit for this. But a lot of that is going to be determined by the fellows and by the community.
Yeah.
Those are all the questions I see.
Okay.
Last call, we've got 4 minutes left. Speak now or email us, fellowship at citybureau.org. Um, and, we're here to help. We want you to know what you need to know. We want you to be happy and confident in your application. So, don't hesitate
Yeah.
to reach out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tatiana. Thanks, everyone, for the kind words.
Hit us up. Just so you're aware of what the next steps are. The deadline is August 11th. We'll start moving applicants into the finalist stage for interviews in mid-August. So you will hear from us whether you're moving on to an interview or not, and you'll have an opportunity to get feedback on your application, anything like that. If you're contacted for an interview, you'll get a scheduling link, and you'll either be interviewed by me, Ariel, or Lindsay, who is our fellowship manager. And we'll make our final selections in late August and we'll start September 8th, so the day after Labor Day. This is a very competitive program. We only have 6 slots, so please don't get discouraged. We are often having to make decisions among several people who we think would be a good fit for the program, and we're deciding on very, minute things. So please don't get discouraged if you don't make it this time. There will be more fellowships. It's our longest standing program at City Bureau. It's not going anywhere. So just apply again. And please, ask us for feedback. We're happy to give you any feedback about what could make you a stronger candidate in the future. So, and definitely consider documenters if you have not already done that, or if you have signed up to be a documenter but you haven't taken assignments. That's a really fantastic opportunity completely on its own. Whether you want to be a fellow or not, but please do consider that because it's a great opportunity to get more involved in your community, to start digging into some of these civic issues yourself. So, yeah,
One
I
last
think that is all
question.
I've got. Oh, hit me.
Nope,
Okay.
one final one. If we have multiple project ideas, can we dive into it during the fellowship? Listen, I'm not saying no. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that based on like in our old format, we had fellows ask, can I write more
Yeah.
articles than this one
Yeah.
feature article? And we say, like, absolutely. You get that first one done. You can write as many articles as you want. No one has actually gotten to that point. This is a new format. We're in a whole new fellowship. So, hey, maybe not opposed to it. Love the energy, love the enthusiasm. I am always one to say, like, how can we make it work? How can we make it possible? So I'm down. I'm never gonna say no unless it becomes like I want you to do one thing really well instead of like two
Right.
things
Hmm.
not so well. So
Yeah.
it just depends on the project. It depends on the parameters. This is a new fellowship. We're starting from scratch. We're going to be answering a lot of questions along the way. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, so we won't say no, but we also are aware that 6 months seems like a long time. It goes by really fast, and we usually don't have time for more. But if like hold that thought, because maybe that's something you pursue after the fellowship. Like you already have the skills of how to develop
yes.
a project. Maybe that's your next step, and we can give you the support of like, great, okay, I did this project, so now my next thing after we finish in April is this thing that I also was thinking about. So, yeah.
And we
Uh,
always, we help you as much as, as much as you want from us beyond the fellowship. We still have alumni reach out to us. We still, help out with, cover letters, resumes. I had a meeting a few weeks ago where, I was just talking with a fellow about a huge thing they were trying to launch and, getting some feedback on that. So we're always here to help, and we're always happy to help you with the ideation and planning and figuring out what comes next post fellowship too.
awesome. So we are at time. So thank you all so much for being a part of this. I really hope it's helpful. Like I said, when you log off from here, you should see a quick survey pop up on your screen. It should take only about like 60 or 90 seconds, but it would really help me to know what was helpful about this, if anything, and how we can improve in the future. And I hope that if you found that this is a good fit for you, please do apply. And we look forward to seeing you. We look forward to talking more with you. If you have any other questions, fellowship@citybureau.org. We're happy to get in touch with you then. So thank you so
Great.
much. Have a good rest of your
Thanks,
day.
everybody.
Appreciate it. Bye bye.
Bye all. Stop recording.